people are kind of pushing you onto this platform in some ways. Is there any part of you that wants to go at that full time and kind of push away from the ABC News stuff and just do your own thing?
It's so interesting. There are a lot of threads in that question. One of the things is this interesting tension for me of, I am now basically I don't think of my books as self-help per se, or I describe my most recent book as self-help for skeptics, or I call it chicken soup for the skeptic. So it's kind of like anti-self-help. No silver bullets on offer completely. The whole 10% happier shtick is like counter-programming against what I think of as traditional self-help. But I am very careful not to present myself as a guru, because I'm truly not a meditation teacher. I'm very interested in meditation. I've written 2 books on the subject. I've been meditating for 9 years. I go on silent meditation retreats. I have a pretty robust personal practice. But if you truly want to be what I consider a real legit teacher, those people study for decades. They go on months and months and months and years in many cases of silent meditation retreats. Their level of inner expertise is not something that, frankly, I will ever be able to attain in my lifetime, and I don't want to in any way put myself on that level. So the way I think about myself is as a gateway drug, and so I'm the sort of, I can provide a sort of a wrapper around the practice that makes it fun, hopefully funny and fun and attractive, and then I do a bait and switch. I step out of the picture and bring in a meditation teacher, male or female, whatever the age. I truly, on the app, we do a lot of work to make sure we have a diverse group in every possible way of teachers who can speak to different audiences on different subjects. But the other part of the question you asked me was, do I want to step out of ABC and go into this full time? The answer to that is no. It's a little bit of a problem because I have these 2 things going on. News, which I absolutely love, and I've been doing since I was 22, and have zero desire to step away from. And then this whole meditation thing. And the only answer is to work my ass off 7 days a week and, negotiate this with my wife and figure out how can we do that in a way that doesn't burn me out and doesn't take me away too much from my family. But I have these 2 amazing opportunities. I just re-signed at ABC, and I absolutely love it there, and I love my bosses. They're just they've been, like as I said before, super supportive, and I have tons of opportunities. I mean, I anchor Nightline and Weekend GMA. I get to travel around the world. I was in Russia in October doing a full half hour for Nightline about what's it like in Putin's Russia. I've got all sorts of crazy adventures I'm going to do this year with ABC. It's just so filled with opportunity for me. And I'm in my bones a journalist, and we're at this time where journalism really matters. I have 0.0% desire to step away from any of that. But I also have this whole meditation life that I also don't want to step away from. And so it's every day for me is a challenge of figuring out how can I do everything I want to get done without driving myself crazy and without being an asshole.
Right.
That's a key
not
thing.
An easy challenge.
By the way, you were asking about rules. A great rule, which... it's more aspirational than anything, but a great rule is don't be an asshole. If you can set that as a challenge. I've actually been thinking that I want to make 10% happier kind of comfortable sweat suit gear that you can meditate in with a long sleeve sweatshirt, and right where the sleeve meets the watch, I want to have in very subtle, maybe stitching, don't be an asshole. Because it's a great reminder. It's a great way to go through the world of, just don't be an asshole.
Right.
And I break this rule all the time, but as an aspiration, directionally, it really makes a lot of sense. And frankly, I have a whole chapter in my first book called The Self-Interested Case for Not Being a Dick. And there is, think about, and this is the kind of self-awareness that meditation can give you. What does it feel like when you hold the door open for somebody? If you're paying attention to your mind, in that moment, it feels good. That is infinitely scalable. And what does it feel like when you're talking shit behind somebody's back? It doesn't feel good if you're paying attention. There's a little bit of dopamine, rush about gossip, but frankly, what does it really feel like when you're running somebody down behind their back? It doesn't feel good. And meditation, which boosts your self-awareness, helps you see this, and it provides a powerful incentive to not be an asshole.
I find that when my life is maybe getting a little bit chaotic, say if I'm working on a documentary and like you said, it can be tough to fit all these different things
Yeah.
that you're trying to do in. When that happens, when my life gets a little bit unbalanced and I'm focusing too much on a film or too much on the podcast or whatever it might be, I do tend to see that creep up because like you kind of lose your patience easily.
Yes.
Natalie will come home and then, it will be that much more likely that I might piss her off in some way. Not because I'm an asshole at heart, but because I'm an asshole in that moment. My dad has this great quote. It was like one of his best friends told it to him. He said, "It's all right to act like an asshole every once in a while. Just don't be one."
Yes.
And that really, I think meditation helps, but the balancing helps as well in that Rich Roll, I was talking to him. He was on the podcast and he was saying, I was like, so how do you deal with the balance? Like you write books, you do the podcast, you do all this stuff, like training for these ultra marathons. How do you balance it all? And he's like, for the most part, like on a day-to-day, my life may not be entirely balanced. It may not be in perfect unison and harmony at all times. But in the long run, I try to make sure, like over the span of a month, I've, spent time with family and friends, and I've worked on my personal projects and done all this. And I find that works because sometimes when you're working on these really big projects, they can be draining. And like you guys learned going out on the road and filming and shooting all these interviews and going on tour, it can be really draining and it can be really difficult to always be in a perfect state of harmony.
I like what Rich said, that so your overarching goal should be to have balance, writ large, but on any given day, you may not have it. And I think that's true for people who have a lot going on. I think that's true. But as you pointed out in the new book, Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, actually I have something of a breakdown toward the end of the book because I have a startup company, I have a podcast, I have a very busy day job, we have a very young child around the house, I want to have a happy marriage, and I'm writing a book on top of it. And by the way, this book from conception to publication was, I think, 14 months. That is ridiculously fast for a book, and especially it's an ambitious book. And I was dying, and my wife had to take me aside and be like, "Dude, you need to turn it down a notch," and that was very useful. And so, what I would say, actually, the one I think takeaway here for listeners in terms of finding balance, one major asset, if you can find it, is a good partner. I happen to have married very well, and she pulls no punches, tells me when I'm being an idiot, and is sympathetic too, but also honest. And that is hugely useful because whoever you're living with, whoever your partner is going to know you better than anybody and is going to see things that you aren't seeing and can point them out to you. And if they're skillful at doing that, that's a great way to achieve balance.
It's kind of like when you're meditating, and I don't know what you would call it because you have the voice in your head and then the observer of the voice. Like your wife in some ways is the observer.
It's a great analogy.
Of you being an
It's
asshole.
a great analogy. So she plays the role of mindfulness. So in meditation, just for the uninitiated, the basic steps in meditation is to sit quietly, usually in a reasonably quiet place, close your eyes. Second step is to bring your full attention to the feeling of your breath coming in and going out, usually wherever it's most prominent, your nose, your chest, your belly. And the third step is the key, because as soon as you try to do this, your mind's going to go bonkers. And the whole goal is just to notice when you've become distracted and to start again and again and again and again. And in that moment, many people, when they see that they've become distracted, they think that they've failed. But actually, that is a victory. That is the victory. And it's a victory of real consequence, because when you see how crazy you are, you're less owned by the craziness. But so, as you pointed out, there's an interesting thing. So there's my thinking, and then there's whatever knows that I'm thinking. And this is the great mystery of consciousness. We don't know what it is that knows. But one word that often gets used is mindfulness. So it's the ability to see what's happening in your head at any given moment, be it thoughts or feelings, physical sensations, without getting carried away by it. So I can see a big burst of anger without drowning in it and acting on it. And that is just the ability to kind of step out of the trance of anger, which is, by the way, not special. This is no special effects here. This is your birthright. The ability to know what's going on in your head without getting carried away by it isn't some special thing. Everybody has it. We are classified as a species as Homo sapiens sapiens, the one who thinks and knows he or she thinks. But the second sapiens is largely atrophied over time because in our culture, nobody points out to us, hey, dude, you can actually, through the process of meditation, step out of the traffic of your sort of inner chaos and see it all without getting carried away by it, at least for nanoseconds at a time. But that allows you to have a leg up on your own inner life.